Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be talking about negative exponents and zero as an exponent. So let's get right to it. So when we're talking about zeros and negatives as exponents, we have to keep a couple of things in mind. First and foremost, we need to be able to say any number, or a better way to say this is non-zero number, zero, number that number, which we're going to represent as a, to the 0 power is equal to 1. If a equals 0, then your answer is undefined. Now remember, ladies and gentlemen, undefined doesn't mean we don't have a definition for it. In math, undefined means it is its own definition. It's undefined. There isn't a definition, not that we can't find one. All right, the next thing we need to know, we'll go ahead and talk about negatives when we get there. Oh, look, that's right now. All right, so the idea of negatives is this. You're actually going to rewrite this as a reciprocal. In other words, if you have a negative exponent, you are going to rewrite it as the same base, the positive exponent, and reciprocal means under 1. Now, we're going to find out in a little bit what happens when that negative is already below, but we're not going to worry about that yet. What we are going to do is we're going to go ahead and solve this out and say that's the same thing as 3 times 3, which is 9, and 3 times 3, which is 9, and multiply that answer and get 81. Or another way to think about it is 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27, times 3 is 81. So here we have evaluated and gotten a final answer and a simplified answer. We are good to go. So this is the same, slow down, mouth, let the brain catch up. 3 to the power of negative 4 is the same thing as 1 over 3 to the 4th, which is the same thing as 1 over 81. So 181st can be rewritten as 3 to the power of negative 4. All right, what happens if we have an operation? What's going on here? Well, remember, we can only apply this negative well, it's not only, it's when do we want to apply, I guess is the better way to say it. If we wanted to, we could rewrite this as 1 over negative 8.5 to the 4th times negative 8.5 to the 4th. And we could go through and solve that and say that's the same thing as 1 over negative 8.5 to the 4th times negative 8.5 to the 4th over 1, and these would cancel and be 1, and get the idea that this is equal to 1. This is true. This is just a lot of work to be able to do it, because the same thing can be done this way. This is the same thing as just writing the bases, negative 8.5 to the negative 4 plus 4. Because we have the same base, we can just add the exponents, and that's going to be the same thing as negative 8.5 to 0, and any number other than 0 to the 0 power is 1. Now, you're going to hear me hopefully say this time and time again, whether you're re-listening to this video to catch it or in class, and that is any non-zero number to the 0 is 1. And that is because 0 itself to the 0 is not 1. Any non-zero number means 0 cannot be the number chosen. So 0 to the 0 is undefined, anything else to the 0 is 1. All right, let's take a look at how this ends up working out over here when we end up with a negative exponent after an operation. So we have to remember that this is the same thing as our base, and then subtract our exponents. Well, that's 2 to the negative 2, because 6 minus 8, 8's bigger, so I keep the negative, and 8 minus 6 is 2. Now, sorry, my brain there just went a loop. I thought about 3 different ways I could write this. Some of them more advanced techniques, thoughts, and things like that. So I'm going to write this the simplest way and just say, since it's negative, I'm just going to write 1 over. And then we have 2 squared. This 1 over replaces the negative. Let me repeat that. 1 over replaces the negative sign. Or 1 over replaces the negative sign. One more time. 1 over replaces the negative sign. In other words, the negative sign in an exponent is the same thing as saying the inverse of 3 to the 4th. And then we can rewrite it like this. Or the inverse, see, notice how I'm saying the inverse as the negative sign. So this is how I'm reading it. The inverse of 2 squared. Well, the inverse means 1 over whatever I say after that. So 1 over 2 squared. And that's going to be equal to 1 over 4. And then I have my final answer. Now, a fun fact is if the negative is in the denominator, because that can happen. If the negative is in the denominator, that means your denominator actually moves to your numerator. Just like here, this would be considered a numerator. And so it moves your numerator to the denominator and your denominator to the numerator. It always just reverses. Inverse means you take your numerator and you put it in the denominator. If it's in your denominator, you move it to your numerator. There'll be more advanced ideas on this later, but remember, inverse is not necessarily 1 over. Inverse means flip your fraction. All right, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and pause the video and copy what's on the screen into your notebook. Now that you're back, anytime you have to rewatch the video for clarity to remember something, you need to write what you picked up into your notes. Use arrows, circles, shapes, pictures, whatever else you need to, but add it to your notes to make them yours. Last, ladies and gentlemen, you are in school. When we are learning, it's about understanding the process, not about finding an answer. We'll see you tomorrow.